Hello, welcome to the Raise Your Volume Academy podcast, my dear Revas. This is Tiffany Kane, your host, and I'm here today with a special episode. I am re-releasing an episode that I recorded with my dear friend Maida Garcia 2 years ago. Almost 2 years ago to the day, we recorded this episode, and it was in response to a young woman that went missing and was murdered by her boyfriend. And it was all in the news. And this is her response, because the young woman that went missing was a white woman, and the media attention was dramatic, which it should have been. Anytime a woman is murdered, the media attention should be dramatic. But what my friend Maida Garcia noted was, oh my goodness, women of color go missing all of the time. Indigenous women, Black women, Latinx women go missing all the time, and we don't hear about it in the news. They get murdered all the time, and we don't hear about it in the news. And so this conversation is a response to that. Why am I re-releasing this? I'm re-releasing it because this is so timely for a couple of reasons. Number one, as you know, my family just experienced a horrific tragedy. My sister-in-law was murdered by her intimate partner, by her ex-husband, in a terrible, tragic, violent act of domestic violence. She is a woman of mixed heritage, Mexican and white. And it's fitting because she's a woman who fell through the cracks for a good amount of her life, a mother of 7, and a woman who needed help and didn't always get the help that she needed. It is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness. And it is Hispanic Heritage Month. And so all of those things are very fitting, and why I felt it was important to re-release this episode. Last week's episode, I told you about the tragic loss of my sister-in-law. I told you about the difficulties in our family dealing with that loss. I told you that her perpetrator did get caught. He is currently in jail. He has been charged with premeditated murder. It was such a horrific act of violence that they knew he had been planning to kill her for a while. And it's devastating. It is so sad. He was somebody she trusted, and she had been living in his home. She trusted him to take care of her, even though they were ex-spouses. They were still friends. They still had children. Their son had died a couple months previously. He had committed suicide. And their daughter was getting married the day before she was murdered. She was murdered Friday morning. Her body was found Friday evening, Saturday morning, somewhere late evening, early morning, and their daughter's wedding was Saturday. And so the daughter had to wake up on her wedding day to find out that not only had her mother been murdered, but it was her father that murdered her mother. And of course, neither of her parents would be there for her wedding. I mean, can you even imagine? You probably can't even imagine. I know I can't imagine. So that's what has happened to my family. Now, I do want to let you know that the episodes you're hearing this month are going to be pretty raw, pretty unedited. My partner, David, and his brother are my editors. We own an editing business. And so they edit all my podcast episodes. And I am not asking them to edit these episodes. I do not want them to worry about having to listen to this content right now. They are not there emotionally where this would be a healthy thing for them. So this is between you and me. And so you're getting raw, unedited episodes, but you're getting episodes filled with heart and filled with love. And I'm sharing with you information that I think is very, very important. Now, how does all of this fit into the Raise Your Volume world? This is the Raise Your Volume Academy podcast. You're my Rivas. How does domestic violence and all of this fit into that world? Well, it fits so beautifully because we need to raise our volume against the things that allow domestic violence to happen, this patriarchal system that we have that allows domestic violence to happen. In some future episodes, I'm going to explore some of those things. We need to raise our volume against violence against women in general. This should not happen. It should not be allowed. We need to raise our volume against any form of intimate partner violence. And we need to raise our volume against the shame that surrounds this. When I started my podcast, I started it as Love and Life After Divorce, and I explored relationships. And I explored how we can heal from toxic relationships and abusive relationships, because that was what I had left. I had a 19-year relationship, a marriage with a man who, I like to say, hurt people. You know, he had a lot of things he needed to work on himself. And because of that, he took out a lot of his hurt on me and on the kids. He since has done a lot of work on himself, and he is so much better now. And I have to say, our relationship as co-parents is so much healthier now. But it was really, really, really rough there for a very long time. And so this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart and that I think is so important. So I'm re-releasing a previous episode. It is a conversation between my friend Maida, who is an advocate for Hispanic women, Latinx women, Latin women, and she is an advocate for women of color. And I love the way she talks about things. I love her insights, and I take so much value from this conversation, and hopefully you will too. Hello, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Tiffany's Titillating Talks. This is one of those episodes where I have my musings, where I talk to you about things that have been going on. And today I'm shaking it up a little bit, and I'm bringing on a friend, and we're just going to have a conversation and a chat, and you guys are going to get to be a part of this conversation with us today. Maida Garcia is a really wonderful friend of mine, and we were having a talk the other day on the subject of domestic violence. And as you guys know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we had an incident in a horrible murder, Gabby Petito, in the beginning of the month, that we, what was missing and found murdered, and the suspect is her boyfriend. And so domestic violence came in the news. And Maida and I were having a conversation about it. And I said to Maida, oh my goodness, we need to have this conversation on the podcast. So welcome, Maida. So excited to have you here to help round out the conversation so that we can bring multiple viewpoints and multiple voices and shed light on domestic violence in many different communities. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. All right. So when we were talking about Gabby, you said something very interesting. So I'd love to hear it from your mouth, how you feel about this topic.
Domestic violence is something that is never taken lightly, no matter what race or culture or anything that wherever you come from, that's never something that is acceptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the loss of Gabby is obviously right. That's her name, Gabriella.
Yeah.
Is very hard on her family, and they're very fortunate to have it placed on the news. CNN's running it, Channel 4, Channel 2, everyone's running it. But I think what's heartbreaking for me about it as a whole and as a Latina woman is that this stuff happens all the time with the minority community. There's a little girl, 13 or 14, from North Miami. She's been missing since September 17th. Her dad stands in front of a supermarket with flyers begging people to help find his daughter.
Mm.
But you don't see that all over the news. He was really lucky that the New York Times placed an article about him, but that's as far as it went. So I think for me, it's I'm not trying to dismiss a murder or a domestic violence case or a missing woman. I think it's more of the equity of how a woman of color who has gone missing is treated and how her family is treated when they actually try to report it. And I say try because most times when, this is from personal experience of knowing people who have gone and tried to go to the cops and say, "Hey, my daughter's missing," or "My sister's missing." If they're under 18, they chalk it up to they're a runaway or trafficking because, Mexican cartel, or were they involved in, did they live in a low socioeconomic community? So it's like, it's just another statistic. It's just another number.
Oh.
And if they're over 21 or over 18, they're, authorities, their comment usually is, well, they're an adult. They're big girls. They can figure themselves out.
Mm.
So that is where the inequity lies. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
So to say, oh, it's, if she's Latina, if she's Black, it was a runaway case, and, it doesn't become a priority for cops. So, and I'm not saying all police are like that. It's just numbers. 10,000 Black women went missing this past year.
Oh my goodness. That is just, that's horrible.
So where are those stories? Where are their advocates?
Yes.
Who's talking about them on the news? So I think for me, that's where it really does become an issue where we're just, our society is not comfortable. I mean, can you imagine? Let's be quite honest. Can you imagine if every time a Latina or an African American woman went missing, it would be on the news? Man, it'd be a whole other ball game.
It would be.
Right?
Yeah.
So, there are organizations that are trying to dedicate time to like helping with women of color who have gone missing until they're found. But it's, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get this publicized? How do you get people to investigate? It's hard because a lot of times they just get ignored. And
Why
it
do
just
you think
becomes
that
another
is, Maida?
statistic.
Why is there a whole population of people who are being ignored in these situations, whether you're a missing person or it's a violence situation, domestic violence, intimate partner violence? Like, why are these being ignored? We're getting in the deep,
I wish
painful
I had like
conversation here.
I wish I had like the answer for you on that. I mean, it's hard. I think that, to be super quiet on, and this is just my personal opinion, this is not anything that's coming from anywhere else,
We're
but my
having a
heart and my
chat.
head is that we're having a chat.
We're
But
having a chat.
it it's very easy to dismiss when a woman of color is missing, because of historically
Mm.
where we have what what our role has been.
Mm.
Um, I think, people try to say, well, it's the 21st century. People have to get over it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's about getting over it. It's about realizing that it really has never gone away.
Right.
You know,
Very
you're
marginalized, right? Just
very marginalized. You're just, I had a couple of years ago, I had a situation where I actually had I don't know if I ever told you this story, Tiffany. I had my wallet and my purse stolen from my car. And when I called, they were like, okay, we'll just call your credit card company. As I was doing that, I saw where my credit card was being used. And I went to go get my stuff. And, there was able to get most of my stuff back.
don't
But
mess
when the
with
cops
Maida,
came,
people. Don't mess with Maida.
I'm not going to give you the details. Um, well, when we're not recording, I'll give you the details. But for me, the sad part is my daughter was with me. And I had these young gentlemen, God bless them, that they helped in the situation. But I was told on the phone, let them go.
Oh.
Don't deal with them. And then when the cops got there, I was sat on the ground. They took pictures of my hands, and I had to do profile pictures in the parking
Maida.
lot
What?
of an
Why?
establishment
Maida.
because I'm this color. That's why. It has no, there's no, it has nothing. They don't care that I have 2 master's degrees. They don't care that I have a really good job and that I own my own home, and that doesn't matter. This is all that they see. And now they just see 2 brown ladies, and one is irate as all hell
Mm-hmm.
because she's watching the vandals get away.
And your daughter
It's
had to watch that.
it and my daughter had to watch it.
Oh, Maida.
So it's such a different, um, we're just, uh, it's just a different way that we're looked upon. There's not the urgency.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the urgency to help women who are of color who are in abusive relationship or who have gone missing? There's a lot of excuses that have been created for the reasons that they're gone.
What are
Um,
some of the
a
excuses
lot of
you
these,
hear?
again, they're a runaway. Oh, they were probably running with the wrong crowd, or, she's probably just trying to figure herself out. Just give her time. She'll come back. Um, and parents are dismissed. And, God forbid, if the parents that come from a community that's low socioeconomic, there's no chance they're being taken seriously. Forget it if they don't even speak English.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, they're not being heard. And then, on top of that layer, if it becomes how do they don't if I'm a parent, I only speak Spanish, my child has gone missing, who do I talk to?
Mm.
I I don't have the resources. I don't have, the information or the wherewithal to say, "Hey, I'm going to call Channel 4. I'm going to call Channel 2." And then even if they do, even if they call Telemundo,
Mm.
who's going to listen to my story? Like, what is it that you have to do uh, to get yourself to a point where you can be on national news the way Gabby was? Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I honestly like that father that I'm telling you about from Miami. His name is Enrique Gonzalez. Literally stands with flyers looking for his daughter Victoria, who's 13. And no one pays him any mind. He's trying real hard.
It's almost
you know?
like society is saying there are some lives that are more valuable than others. There are some stories that are more interesting than others. And we're telling this story about these people, these women that go missing, that somehow minimizes their loss, that somehow minimizes their humanity in a sense, right? Like, oh, well, maybe they were part of a gang, or, oh, there's a lot of violence in that community anyway, or, something like that. I mean, I've heard things like that. And it takes a human life, a human
And
being, a
dehumanizes them.
human life, and dehumanizes. Yes.
It
Yes.
100% does. So then you are someone who is disposable,
Oh,
replaceable, not necessary to society. Um, but that's been happening forever. I mean, historically speaking, you know, that has just kind of been the MO of the United States. Do you know what I mean? And I'm only speaking of here. I mean, historically, we can go as far back as Hernan Cortes and like
hmm.
the Aztecs. I mean, we can go as far back as European conquest, which will be on here till 3:30 in the morning. But
But
don't
that's
make
that's
me go there.
probably where, I mean, that's where a lot of these feelings started, though, isn't it? Like a lot of these viewpoints, the many forms of slavery, whether it was
Yeah,
indigenous
there is
peoples or African American or
there's a great special on Netflix. It's Will Smith is hosting it,
mm,
and it's about how African Americans, how like they came and how throughout history, and you know they talk even about women in that one about how difficult it was to try to you know be put on the same playing field, right?
mhm.
As a white man.
Yeah.
And it's it doesn't I don't think it totally, it it hasn't really changed that much. You
No.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, you know, it's just and it's so much harder. It's one thing to be, a Latino man or African American man, then put on the you're a woman.
Yeah.
It's a whole other ball game. And there's like I said, going back to like women missing, there's a couple of organizations are out there trying to do stuff. Like Be Latina is one of them.
Mm,
They post um, women who are missing. Um, but it's really hard. It's great what they do. They tell the story, they give a little background, and then they show a picture. And it's just, I remember even, I don't know if you ever noticed it, Tiffany, um, on the freeway, there was a picture of a girl in like her cap and gown for
oh,
graduation.
mhm.
And she says, help find my murderer.
Yes.
Dude, that mom, do you know how much money she exhausted just to be able to do that?
That came from her
If
personal.
this, yes, yes. If this mother is exhausting that and she still couldn't get local news, no one's biting. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Uh, it's it's not as exciting when it's just some girl who lives in some neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? As
mhm.
opposed to, again, I'm trying not to. The loss of a life is a loss of a life, no matter what. But it's just interesting how our society was easy to gravitate towards Gabby's story and how she was trying to become a YouTube star and she was trying, like it's just a sad situation because um, it's just this is how it is. It's a
Mhm.
constant, and I wish I had like a better like like a solution. It's something that I rack my mind about all the
Yeah.
time. It's like, why is this? This is also a pandemic. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
For our community,
Yep.
like why Black and Latina women, uh, why this has happened, you know?
Yeah. I think women in general, in any um, population, tend to be underrepresented in the news as far as getting fair treatment for crimes and things of that sort, right?
Yeah,
You know, boys that rape girls get a little hand smacked, and oh, but he was a swimming star, he was a track star, we don't want to ruin his life. And right, so
absolutely.
girls in general, it's hard enough, and then when you put socioeconomic issues, immigrant issues, racial issues, when you put those things on top of it, it becomes even harder to get treated fairly on these topics. And then I think
Yeah,
domestic violence is a whole nother level, because there's so much of, well, that happened at home. And, you know,
that's why it's called domestic violence.
right.
It's such a weird thing that they're like, it's very dismissive,
It is.
and, but that's why it's called domestic violence because that's the definition of the word. It's such a weird thing when they dismiss it with its own definition. Do you know what
Right?
I'm saying?
I
Like,
do. I
what?
do. Like
Weird. Okay.
anywhere else where somebody gets punched or shoved or hit or any of that, it's not okay. That happens in the grocery store. That's not going to be okay. But oh, well, it happened behind closed doors at your house. And oh, well. And your word against
Right.
his, and we can't do anything about it. And
Yeah.
wow. You know?
Yeah, it's a strange, and even like with this whole pandemic, like I was saying earlier, do you know like even the numbers of Black and Latina women have actually gone up, the rate of missing women during this time? It's like a weird phenomenon. They um about 20,000 women of color um over the age of, I think it was 18 and over, went missing in 2020.
Oh my gosh.
20,000, almost
That's
20,000.
insane.
Where are those stories?
That is insane. I was reading a similar article. Let me see if I can pull it up about Native American women and how it's a very
Yes,
similar
also,
phenomena.
and unfortunately, I mean, I have a very hard time calling them a minority because this is their land.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, they have very similar numbers too, and I think it makes it just as hard whether you live, in a little barrio, or you live in the projects, or you live on a reservation. When you're subjected to live in one of those areas and you go missing as a woman, no one cares
Mhm.
but the family. No one cares.
It's so sad.
No one's like up in arms about how to figure out. A really good foundation to look into is oh gosh, what is it called? Um, Offices um, of it's a Missing Foundation Incorporated is what it is, I believe. I'm gonna have to look that one up. But
We'll put the link in the
Black and Missing Foundation Inc. That's what it is. They've got some great numbers, like to date numbers of things that are occurring right now. So, and women that are missing, and just the lack of support for all of that right now.
mm.
So yeah, it's a struggle. I feel like, I as a mother of girls who are, of Latino descent, like it is it's it's a scary situation.
Yeah.
I would 100% hate to be stuck in a situation where I'm trying to get help and support to find one of my girls, and knowing that this is going to make it an issue.
Maida just pointed to her face. her
Sorry.
her
Yes,
beautiful
my
face, but she's saying
my
her
brown face.
her brown face. Oh,
Yeah, so I mean that is really one of those situations, like it is, um yeah. There's, thousands of indigenous women,
Mm-hmm.
Native Americans going missing. Just like I think it's in one of the Midwest states I was reading. I'm not sure if it's like Wyoming, one of those areas. It's like like 1,000 women,
Yeah.
young girls.
Yep.
No, where
In one
where is
state.
that?
In one state. Yep.
Why why has no one
Yep.
batted an eye
I
on
just
that?
read
Do
an
you know what I'm
article. I
saying?
pulled it up. 2,300 missing. A Native
2,300.
American. Yeah. 2,300.
There you go.
Like
I
it's
mean,
insane. And our native peoples, it's so sad.
right.
So, okay. So this is an important conversation to keep having. As a white woman, I I find it really important to have these conversations and to be able to amplify the other voices, right? Like to say, okay, I want to hear what you have to say about this, and I want to hear, how can I, I'm still a woman, so my voice isn't that much more amplified. But
Hmm.
I have a podcast, and I'd love to amplify this issue. So what would my role be in, what do you think, if you could make a call and say, okay, we need to make this change, and here's how these different people could help, right? Like we've got these organizations that are helping, that are trying to amplify voices. What could somebody like me do to make a change here?
I think it's just being honest about like conversations with people, like reaching out to organizations to see whether it's like donations to help or um you know putting the word out there when they hear of somebody missing, like and unfortunately some of us don't have the same hold the same power that
Yeah.
others do.
Yeah.
But really knowing, and there's a lot going out there. There's like a Netflix special coming out soon. I think it's called something missing, um, Madeline McCain or something like that, and which talks about cold cases. And one of them is, a Latina girl. There's people out there doing stuff like that. I think if you have a platform like this, you're using it. I think you're doing a fantastic job of, having this conversation with me, so that your listeners are aware that this is happening all the time. Like going out there, and I'm going to get real. I think I'm getting too big picture.
Hmm.
R- Reach out and support a community
Yeah.
that needs support. Work with a family that needs help. Like, I mean, that's probably like the easiest thing to be able to do,
Hmm.
as is actually getting in there to try to help and support. But I mean, talking about it is probably the first step in being aware. Like I wish I had like the right answer of
Yeah.
what to do. I mean, when you're dealing with missing women, like I think it's easy to, they're like the call to action would be in a white community is I'm going to call my local newscast. And it's I wish it could just be as easy as, hey, Tiffany, can you call Channel 2 and
Right.
let them know that they got to like post about this poor girl in North Miami who's been missing since September 17th. But, I think just going in and just trying to make it known using this platform that you're using right now as a way to just kind of put it out there. I think that's a great start. You know, it's hard because I feel like this is an issue that's not just about missing women, because missing women of all color go missing all the time,
Yes.
and abuse, you know, happens all the time in homes.
Hmm.
Um, but it's how do you help support those who don't have a voice or whose voices are being, you know, muffled? and hushed. It's such a bigger issue. And I think talking about it and putting it out there is probably the first thing, educating people. Sometimes we hear people and they say stuff that just seems so
Yeah.
wrong. And sometimes we're like, maybe I should. No, I'm just not going to bother to say something. And you know me, Tiffany, these days, I'm just done being worried about hurting someone's feelings
I actually
when
love
it
that
comes
about
to
you,
stuff like
Maida.
that.
I love that about you. I
Why,
I,
thank
I
you.
love that you don't.
Not everyone does.
You know what? Not everybody has to. But
Yeah.
I I think that people that value you really value that about you, that um you bring issues to light that maybe people don't think about. And so yeah, it makes people uncomfortable. And that's okay. Like I think we need to be a little uncomfortable right now. We've gone through some really hard times politically that shook up a lot of muck from the bottom of the lake, right? Like it's all floating
Oh,
around
I
now. So,
I think that we were. Do you remember that movie where I think Toby Maguire was in it, and he walks into this like land that's perfect in the 1950s, and everyone's like Stepford Wives. I cannot think of the name of the movie, but I feel that not that we were living in that, but some people, a large community,
mhm,
was living in that. Everything's great. We're being inclusive. We have, Latinas in commercials now. We let a Black person be a lead in a movie. Like, you know what I'm
mhm,
saying?
mhm.
But really with this whole thing this happened and the last, 4 years, 5 years, like it's like everything was shook up, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And once you start putting I got to think of the name of that movie because as things started to turn, were started in black and white when everything was perfect.
Mm,
And then as they started getting into color, things started to get really weird in the town. And that's kind of how things are now. It's like, whoa, you're not following your role. You're supposed to be a nice person doing this. And now you're not. Why are those people marching all over the street? That's not what they're supposed to do.
no.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we are
Why
definitely
are they
been
getting
turned
mad?
upside down.
Why are they
Why are they
getting mad?
getting mad?
Why are they raising their voices and being mad? How
What's
could they?
wrong with
How
them?
dare
Like,
they?
it's such a, I mean, and on top of with the pandemic and everything, it's just a strange um, shift. I was thinking about it the other day and I was like, it's kind of like an earthquake, right? Or a volcano eruption.
Mm,
More like a volcano eruption. I'm going to go with that, okay? As a sixth grade teacher in the past, and I taught volcanoes. Like they restructure the earth, just
mhm.
like an earthquake, right? I think we're in this part of the world that's like everything is shaking and things are like spouting out and it's crazy, but it's because it's going to create something new.
Yes.
But it's burning our skins off and crushing us to death in the process. Like, I mean, Mount Vesuvius, my friends, Mount Vesuvius,
Pompeii.
like
Really? We're
Pompeii.
in
You know what I
Pompeii
mean?
right
Like,
now.
let's start thinking it's kind of like that, really.
Yep.
Um, and I think people got complacent.
Yep.
I think I'm going to say personally, my culture, myself, you just got a little complacent with, okay, we're just kind of like, you know, going with life you know, and then you realized, wait, we're not as accepted as we thought we were, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm a woman.
Mhm.
So if
Mhm.
I go missing, tough luck for me.
No, Maida,
It's,
I'll call Channel 2 News for you.
oh my God, would you? Thank you so much.
Maida,
If someone tries to take me, they better be ready
they're
though.
gonna be in trouble. I was just gonna say, like, that they'd just be crazy if they try to take you.
Yeah,
So
you
Brene
know.
Brown in, her book, I think it was
I love
Braving the
Brene
Wil
Brown.
oh my god, Braving the Wilderness.
Yes,
I think I
that's a
gave a
good
copy of
book.
that book to, like, everybody. Um, she wrote it, uh, during the first, election with Trump and everything and all of the stuff that she saw. And then that book just became more and more and more relevant as things went on.
Oh my God, yes.
But one of the things that she said that really struck me as super powerful was when we dehumanize anybody, we're opening the door for dehumanizing everyone. And that's something that when we get
Absolutely.
so politicized and we're so Republicans are horrible, evil people and they, eat babies for dinner, and the Republicans say, oh, the Democrats, they are horrible, evil, and they're trying to ruin your entire way of life, and they'll come and take your homes and your cars and
They also eat babies,
and they also
apparently.
eat babies for dinner. Yes.
That's
So
seriously, I feel like they're both saying the exact same
they
thing.
are, but that's exactly her point, is that when you do those things, you dehumanize. And when you dehumanize on either side, it becomes very, very, very easy to do inhumane acts and justify them. And so her call to action is stop dehumanizing people and start trying to understand and start talking and just see the humanity. Like, stop these wild, insane accusations that these people are horrible, awful, terrible people, because they're not. I mean, I think we could even say that about gang members and criminals and things of that sort. Is there's a humanity in them somewhere. And what happened? What did society do? Like, how did this happen to them? And why, when we dehumanize and we say, well, this population, violence is just part of their population, this just happens,
See, and stuff like that just gets under my skin so
Right?
much because I grew up in neighborhoods like that. So it's like for you to say that they want that in their nobody wants that in their neighborhood.
No.
And you get to a point where I think when you're told enough that you are a certain way by those who hold authority, you start to act like that.
Yes.
You really do.
Yes.
And I have personally I had the pleasure of attending a very white high school. I was one of 4 Mexicans there. And when you have people telling you at a tender age of 13 and 14 that you belong in the dumb class of English and that you're going to make a great secretary one day and that we need to check your locker to see if you have drugs, you start to go, okay, that's the side you want to see, But that wasn't me when I was younger. I didn't grow up like fought with my cousins and stuff like that. But my parents were really good about keeping us away from like gang violence and, moved us into neighborhoods that were going to keep us safe. Even though I'm a public school teacher, they put me in private school because they were trying to do the best they could for me at the time. But, high school became a different beast. But because those people of authority started to give me a narrative that started to create a different me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not trying to dismiss like, well, they should know better to not be violent. But good Jesus, I couldn't even get my son. He's 17. I couldn't get him up this morning. You know what I mean? Like when you've got a hormonal teenager, and now on top of it, who most times they're insecure, and not sure of themselves, and now you're telling them that they're not good for anything, and they could make a great secretary if they're lucky. And here, take a typewriting class instead of taking a journalism class. And that's personal for me.
Yep.
Or I took pottery and my teacher said, most Mexicans are good at this because it's part of your culture. Okay. That makes sense. Not that I just love pottery. It's just part of my culture. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's there's a lot stacked up against us.
Yeah.
And those who are not of, who do not come from a background that, you know, Latinx or, if you're Black, you're indigenous, like those who are not of color, it's very hard to understand what that feels like,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't actually come up with those experiences. And I've had people, and I'm good people I like, but I grew up around Mexicans. That's nice. It's great that you say that. Thanks for sharing. Like the minute you have to share that with me, I'm like, I'm a little concerned that you're telling me.
But I have friends that are
You know what I
Mexicans.
mean? But I have friends that are Mexican. But I went to a school that's was all Mexicans. I
I like
hung out with
Taco Tuesday.
Mexicans.
I like Taco Tuesday, Maida.
I I celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Like, and I've had people say stuff like that, and I was like, you're not hearing me. Like, you don't grow up like understanding what that life is like on a day to day. It's a different way to grow up. And so, uh, when you're growing up as a girl of color in a Latino community, in the Latinx community, it's a different it's different. There's so much more stacked upon us, and so going taking way the circle back around, when you go missing, it's easy. That's why it's easy to dismiss. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like, well, their community, or well, it just it just becomes easy for everyone to just say, okay, and the mom, puts her picture up on the mantle and next to her bed and cries every morning, and then that becomes the end of it, and the end. So it's a sad story,
it is a
but it's a
sad story.
story that is told every day to tens of thousands of moms or grandmas, abuelitas, dads. It happens all the time. It's just not out there like it is for, you know,
Yeah.
for mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
for the white for the white girl,
Yeah.
it's not the same. It just isn't. I really wish it was, and I know it's uncomfortable for people to hear that, but those are the facts.
Maida, I'm okay with discomfort. I think discomfort's really important. We're at a time and a place where we have to get uncomfortable, and we have to peel the layers of paint away that are making everything pretty because we got to be able to see, and we've got to have these conversations, and we've got to listen. Like, to me, my most important job is listening, and um and having that you are a human being deserving of my full attention and love and care.
And I appreciate that. And I, knowing that, I think for me, if people realize that privilege is a real thing
Hmm.
and super exists, then that's the first kind of little layer.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest one to get past. And I can't imagine putting myself in that shoe, knowing, like, how do you admit that? I think about that sometimes. If I'm a woman that has privilege, or I'm of a culture that has privilege, how do you swallow that pill? You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
How do you take that? What if you don't want it? You know what? You got it.
You
You
got it.
you don't get to
You
give her. You
you're
got it.
Maida, I have this conversation with a lot of fellow white women, and this conversation about privilege, and I've had it many times with people I care very much about. One of the ways that I explain it is, okay, your dad, your uncle, your husband, they love you, right? Because you always get, but I care about everybody. I care about everybody. Okay, so that they love you, right? Yeah. Okay. When you are saying something and they cut you off, they mansplain you, they brush away your feelings, they brush away your emotions, they dismiss your experience, how's that make you feel? Oh, that doesn't feel good, right? When something happens and to a woman, an act of violence to a white woman, and the white boy that did it doesn't get punished, gets his hand slapped, how's it make you feel? Okay, doesn't feel very good. Now imagine, take that mansplaining and that male privilege and now put it on yourself as a white woman and your white privilege. You can love people and you can say, I love everybody. But if you're doing your own version of mansplaining, you're doing your race-splaining to somebody and putting words in their mouth and brushing away their feelings and their emotions, then you're doing the same thing that men do to you. And I think that helps to
That's
understand a
very
little
well
bit.
said. It is. It's very well said. Like, it's just, I think what's hard is then what do you do with that?
Mhm.
Like, then what do you do? Once you've sunk in with the fact that you got privilege, where do you go with it from there? And I think that's again, we're in the volcano.
We're in the
It's
volcano.
burning us to death right now. So I think that's the part we're still trying to figure out. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
for sure.
It's just, you know, I think it's about education at this point. Watch those documentaries, uh, uh, um, read books that have to do with, what's going on. I mean, just I think educating yourself and immersing yourself, it starts to really, help peel those layers back and make sense of it, where then there's more empathy. And I think with privilege, the part that lacks is the empathy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that's hard. You're like, it becomes more of a defense mechanism when somebody says, "Oh, you have privilege." No, I don't. Well, no. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm just stating a fact, you know?
Yes. Yep.
I'm stating a fact. So I think education is really important. I think knowing those things, supporting people who have the platform, supporting people like yourself who have the platform to be able to kind of put the word out there and start to educate people so that they know. I mean, some of us try to get in on the groundwork and try to like share, girls that are missing or articles or stuff like that, or we talk about it amongst our own community. But yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not one that says, go out there and quit your job and start to like protest. Like everyone's got to do what they have to do to start to, peel those layers and start to help make a difference and a change.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And I hope the takeaways that you have are, number one, these are important conversations to have. And number two, listening is equally as important as having the conversations. If we are going to put an end to domestic violence, and especially if we are going to put an end to domestic violence as it pertains to women of color, huge changes need to happen, and it starts with us. It starts with us listening, with us taking away the shame that surrounds it, and with us supporting each other. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Remember, raise the volume of your voice. I'm listening.